This is pretty awesome and fun news. So Traxxas is releasing the Traxxas Sledge. And the reason why this is so amazing is this is what the E-revo should have been. I know many of you probably love the E-revo. One of my nephews has one. I don't like them, and it's because I don't like the suspension. Now, a lot of people say, oh, suspension is great. It's based off Formula One. Yes, it's based off Formula One. The only reason why Formula One does it is because it's compact, not because it's the best in the world. It's the best for their purpose, but those are on-road vehicles that need to save on weight and space. These vehicles are not. So I'm going to talk about the Revo first a little, and then compare some of the things. I do have a Nitro Revo, and suspension setup is very similar. Something I hate are these rods. These, if you hit something, you're going to break them, and then your suspension's out. The other thing, too, is the shocks. The shocks are top-mounted, but they're very small GTR shocks. Oil capacity is very little. So for the long travel of the arms, there's a little lever here, little cam, and that has to transfer the energy onto the shock. So it goes from long travel to very short travel. It's a little more challenging to adjust the suspension, and I just don't think it's very good for this type of vehicle. Again, you can put in the comments on why you love it. That's fine. Just don't think it's a very good suspension for a monster truck. I mean, they're fun. They're all right. There's better things out there. That's one of the reasons why I love the MT410 by Techno, because it has massive, robust shocks that are in the arms, so a little more protected than these. Can you break them? Sure, you can break the little plastic caps on the bottom. That's usually the first thing to break if you hit it hard enough. But now I'm going to compare this to the Sledge. So if we look at the wheelbase, we're looking at 1494 inches. I'm just going to go over to millimeters. 380 millimeters wheelbase for the E-revo. Now the Sledge is very, very similar as far as dimensions. If you look at the dimensions, it's just 4 millimeters longer. Not much, but it will make a slight difference. Now, the length is very similar. Now, they both have a wing, but if we look at the length, 585 versus the Sledge, 604. And part of that has to do with the massive tires. The tires are just far bigger. So if you measure from here to here, that's what's making the difference. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is when this hits, you're going to get a lot of tire rather than the front end of the vehicle. Revo, it does the same thing. But if you go with the Proline Tires, or Traxxas makes another tire, it'll do the same thing. It'll be a bigger diameter. So you're looking at overall length increase, mainly because of the front. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The weight, E-revo is a lighter vehicle. This one's a little heavier at 5.75 kilograms versus the Revo's weight of only 5.08 kilograms. There is going to be a weight difference, but part of that has to do with the more robust suspension and chassis. So I think that weight is worth it because you have the larger shocks that are mounted in the arms right here. So if we go here, these are the shocks now. So you have some larger shocks, more oil, it'll be easier to tune, and they mount right inside of the arms. So if you hit something and your tire doesn't take it, well, probably the front end will take it, but the arm is going to help protect the shock. Now, can you still hit the shock and break it? Of course. If you hit anything hard enough, you will break it. But some of the great things about this chassis are actually all of the reinforcements. You have reinforcement right here. You can't really tell in this image. This top reinforcement, which is something I wish the MT would come with, but it does not, but that's all right. And then it has another reinforcement right in here. So you have a lot of braces really in the chassis, quite a few of them. And it's a great looking body, to be honest, for this vehicle. Now, all of the constructions, everything is very robust. Now the Revo had robust knuckles and some other things. One of the things I strongly disliked about the E-revo, to be honest, was the chassis, mainly the way the battery mounts. This one's going to be easier to mount the battery, and this will be easier to modify if, let's just say, you wanted a TrueTech Velcro system or something else, as opposed to the Revo, which has the two little side compartments, and you're limited to the type or size of battery that you can install in them right in here. So if we look at the Revo chassis, right, you have one compartment on this side, one compartment on the other, and then the motor and electronics sit pretty high up here in the center, but quite high. So that's something I don't like. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like the E-revo. Again, I mentioned these shocks. They're really tiny, really small. These little cams here, this is what transfers the force. So again, this converts the long travel into short travel. But when you do that, now there's less that you can adjust, because a small amount of distance here has to absorb a long distance travel over here. Again, great for Formula One or small little touring cars, because they're small, lightweight, compact. You can tuck them in, but not really on a monster truck. You don't need that on a monster truck. So those are things to consider. Versus the Sledge, the electronics sit down low, right on the chassis, as you can see, ESC. Battery goes on this side, right? I can fit my 4S battery here, no problem. I'm the person that thinks 4S is good enough. Some of you are going to say 6S. Some of you are going to probably swap the system and go 8S. More power to you. That's also how you break stuff. But that's all right. It's your money. You do whatever you want with your money. This is just a beautiful looking vehicle. It really is. But those are the reasons why I believe the Sledge will be ultimately a Revo killer. I would not be surprised that the Revo would be discontinued. Although there's such a cult following behind the E-revo, probably not. I mean, if you think about it, the Slash has been around for so many years now, since 2008, right? That's over a decade, and it's selling strong. Very, very strong. And nothing new really has come out, except for, well, now there's a 272R transmission you can swap into it, mainly because of the drag slash. But again, comparing these vehicles, the width, this one is slightly narrower compared to the Revo, but it's not significant. It's something that can easily be solved with just offset on the wheels. Really, 465 versus the Sledge at 459. So we're looking at 11 millimeters, just over a centimeter. So that easily can be, with Proline Tires, trenchers, that will easily compensate for the offset. So that's something to consider. I wouldn't worry about the width really that much. Now, don't worry too much about the speed. This is with two 3S batteries. They say here you run them in series. Just get something bigger and it'll be fine. But something that I really want to compare, but I'll go over here and let me switch over to this, is if we look at this versus the Arma Kraton. Wait, which is which? Wait, did Traxxas just copy Arma? No, okay, the knuckles are different. The body is very similar. Wait, it's the same style suspension, though, as the Arma. Huh. Fascinating. Well, I'm really joking when it comes to this, but you can see the huge resemblance between the Traxxas Sledge and the Arma, which is fascinating because a long time ago, Arma came out with the Arma Nero, with a similar style suspension, right? That Formula One suspension similar to the E-revo, but it's what the E-revo should have been, meaning the links are protected, see, versus these horrible things. I strongly dislike them. But the shocks, you can actually tune them and change the position, and these are actually massive. If you compare these to what the Revo has, they are massive shocks. I wish my Nitro Revo had this. Now, I don't really like the chassis. The chassis is completely different. You have the two batteries on the side. They go on the side. But this is that skeleton chassis that came out on the Savage. If you take a really hard hit on to the side, you can bend it. But this is completely different than the E-revo chassis. They are night and day different if you compare the two. There's no way you can mistake them. But if you're familiar with the history, Traxxas did sue and won because of copying the vehicles. According to them, customers wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So if you go through, read the lawsuit, I'm not going to go into detail, but it's fascinating how this E-revo and this Nero were part of a bitter lawsuit, and Traxxas won because supposedly the Nero copied Traxxas on something that looks very, very different. I mean, customers are a lot smarter than I guess Traxxas was claiming. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like Traxxas vehicles. They're probably some of the, it's the brand that I've purchased more items. That's usually, if I ever gift an RC, it's usually a Slash. But I find it fascinating that now the Sledge looks like a copy of the Arma. The same way the Nero is everything the E-revo should have been, the Sledge is what the Kraton should have been, because I do believe the Sledge is a lot better, which is why I think the Sledge is also a Kraton killer, not just an E-revo. But if we look at these items, I mean, look at the arms, right? Shocks are in. We have very similar items. Here, this is the back view, right? The double suspension right in here. So if we look at the chassis, notice the brace on top, which this is going on to video, and I did not want it to go to video. But if you look at the chassis, it has the bracing. There's that top brace. Here's that center brace. There's another brace. Let's look at what Traxxas did with the Sledge. There's the top brace. There's the other brace. Here's another brace. Did they change the design a little? Sure, but let's look at the bodies. Wow, they look so similar. So I wonder what will happen. Probably nothing, but maybe something. I have no idea. But to be honest, these two vehicles are much closer in resemblance than the Nero and the E-revo. And if the Nero and the E-revo are so different, yet Traxxas soon won, I wonder if Arma would contemplate doing the same thing now that the Sledge is out, and they are incredibly similar. Well, in comparison, right? In comparison. Now, which one do I prefer? I actually prefer the Sledge. I think the Sledge is far better design. It's updated. It's more modern. If you look at the chassis just has a better look to it. Out of all of these vehicles, I think the Sledge will probably pick up some steam, although it is a little pricey. Now, all these prices are subject to change. This is not an advert. This is just what is posted by Traxxas, but the bottom is actually aluminum. It's blue anodized. Then we have these full plastic rails here. And let's see, I'm trying to rotate this to demonstrate the chassis. It's not, this is only going this, there we go. But here we can see the bracing. So if we look at the bracing, this is where the batteries go. I actually really do like this tray compared to the Revo. And here we go. So the chassis. Now, these may seem insignificant, but they add a lot of rigidity, especially in the rear. This is the most important thing. If you were to look at the Nero, if you're familiar, with the Kraton, Kraton. If you were familiar with the Kraton, the chassis is, here we go, it's a little flatter. They did add these ridges here, and the reason why these are important, now the thing is the plastic doesn't go all the way front to rear. The rear, try to see a picture. Well, the rear is kind of exposed. I would have to find another picture really to show you. But going back to this plastic goes all the way front to rear, and this does add rigidity, especially in the rear. Notice these 3 indentations. These are great for strength versus just those 2 little ones on the other one. Plus you get, that long brace, you get the short brace, and then you get the brace that goes all the way across the top. The only thing I may be concerned about would be snagging this here, getting caught in something. That's the only thing. But something too that I love is, now this is based on the images, the gull wings, the rear gull wings. Well, I'm calling them gull wings, but the arms. So if you look at the arms, see how they bend? This is awesome. So again, this is a great design. I really do think this one, assuming Traxxas is allowed to keep this, because again, I don't think Arma would pursue a lawsuit the way Traxxas would, but you never know. Next thing you know, Arma decides to pursue something based on copying a design, and to be honest, these are much closer. If Traxxas won with the E-revo versus the Nero, then I think Arma has really a very good stance compared to this year. So we will see. But again, moving on to this is something that can definitely be modified and tuned a lot easier because of the way the suspension is. The front suspension is a little more protective than those tie rods in the Revo. Now, they are not very expensive, but once you break 20 of them, it adds up. Again, just comparing the Revo, again, look at how low these electronics sit versus the E-revo. These sit pretty high up there. So you have lower LCG despite the weight. You have an easier suspension to tune. You have the gull wings in the front. This is just, I think, a win. It is pricey though, so we'll see. I wish this was actually sold as a kit to build or even as a roller so I could put my own electronics in there. But let's face it, most people buy these vehicles, they want to just put a battery in and just rip it up. So I think this will be a success for Traxxas. Maybe later on we'll see some different models and different trim levels. And the E-revo, maybe we'll see a drop in price, because the only reason why the E-revo will probably survive is just because currently, according to Traxxas, this is an $800 vehicle versus the Revo $650. It's $150. So that will probably convince people to get this. But I'll be honest, if you want to do all the upgrades on this, you might as well just save your money and get the Sledge. Well, the electric systems, so the motor ESC, you're looking at about the same. You're looking at the same stuff, so I wouldn't really dwell over that. They do advertise that this one will now have more power. For example, the servo, so it is a single servo, which is great. And you can get, but again, you're probably going to upgrade that to maybe a ProTech. I actually love my ProTech. That's what I have on my T-Max. But this is it. So we have better components, right? Aluminum shock towers, really nice wing. Long story short, I think Traxxas has really done something great in copying or making something so similar to the Arma Kraton. This is probably the best thing. Compared to the Revo, I think this was cool. It was a novelty when it came out, but not the best. Again, that's my opinion. You may have your opinions on how you think it's the latest and the greatest, even though it's not the latest, but perhaps you think it's the greatest. But again, this is really it. Although the Kraton does have an advantage, and that is price. Usually these go for about $600. Although right now, if you shop Horizon Hobbies, as of this video, Horizon Hobbies, they have some discounts ranging from different prices. I don't remember if it's $50 or $100. Maybe it's more. So right now, this one's the deal as of this video. So that will probably keep the Kraton alive. But we'll see. Let's just do a quick front width. So front width 461. That's something I should have done in the beginning. I got so caught up with the E-revo. 461, and we'll go to the specs real quick. are down here. Let's see, width. What's the wheelbase? Huh, I lost it. Oh, here we go, track. 459. So they're about the same thing. Ooh, that's a tough one. So that's going to be up to you. Between the two Traxxas vehicles, Sledge and Revo, I think the Sledge is the better vehicle. Now, when it comes to the Kraton and the Sledge, that's going to be a tough one, because for the difference in price, I'm not sure this one is worth the difference in price. And one of the reasons why I say that is because I would probably swap out all of the electronics. That's the reason why. But the Sledge is definitely a win for Traxxas. Thank you very much for watching. Please comment below. What are your thoughts on any of the vehicles, or anything that maybe I said, or something that you would like me to cover? Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.
What? Oh, my hair! My tongue! My rod!